close to midnight. The chat window is open. You type a question you're slightly embarrassed to not already know the answer to. The response comes back in seconds. Then you open a second tab, and you search the same thing. You use AI every day to draft the thing you'd rather not spend an hour on, to explain the concept you half understood, maybe to write the email that needs to sound more confident than you feel right now. You open it the way someone opens a calculator, without much thought, because it's there and it works, and then you check the answer anyway. For Gen Z, that second tab isn't a habit they picked up last year. It's something that was formed long before AI existed, and to understand it, you have to go back to what came before. Gen Z were among the first people raised entirely inside social media, not introduced to it at 16 and left to figure it out. They arrived in a world where it was already there, already shaping how people worked, performed, compared, and understood themselves. And somewhere inside that, not always consciously, not in a way that surfaced as a thought, they began to notice something. The way the app kept showing more of whatever made them stop scrolling. The way their mood shifted after a long session in ways that were hard to articulate. The way the platform always seemed to want something. Attention, reaction, data, without being direct about it. Over time, many people in this generation stopped experiencing the internet as a place they simply used. It became a place where they were continuously being read back to themselves. What held attention got amplified. What performed well got repeated. What disappeared quietly often started to feel invisible. And after enough years inside systems like that, something subtle begins to happen. You stop interacting naturally. You begin interacting with an awareness of how the interaction might be received. That awareness did not stay online. They didn't need a documentary to figure out that the recommendation system was tuned to surface content that made them feel worst. They'd already felt it working on them before anyone named it. Something in them had already registered that the contract wasn't what it claimed to be. Not as theory, as experience. Gen Z absorbed this before AI existed, not from researchers or critics or headlines, from using the product every day for years. And then AI arrived. A new platform, a new set of large promises more helpful than anything before it, more capable, more useful to your life, your work, your thinking. And immediately, the attraction was obvious. The tool could compress effort. It could remove friction. It could take the small, exhausting performances of modern life. Emails, captions, summaries, cover letters, messages that needed to sound more confident than you felt, and smooth them into something more manageable. For a generation already tired from years of continuous self-presentation, that kind of relief lands quickly. It is not only about saving time, it is about absorbing some of the performance burden. Built and distributed, in many cases, by the same companies whose previous promises Gen Z was still quietly processing. The distrust wasn't a decision, it was a reflex that was already in place. In a single year, the share of Gen Z reporting anger toward AI rose from 22 to 31%. That shift happened while this generation remained among the most active AI users in any demographic. The tool became more embedded in their lives, and the unease grew alongside it. That is not the pattern of a generation that simply hasn't been won over yet. What tends to get misread is this: the distrust does not stop the use. It runs alongside it. And for many people in this generation, that isn't contradiction. It's a form of fluency, a distinction that took years of navigating systems optimized for someone else's benefit to develop. In some ways, that may be the most defining digital skill this generation developed. Not blind trust, not total rejection, conditional participation. Use the system, benefit from what it offers, remain aware the system may not be fundamentally working in your interest. That orientation did not begin with AI. AI inherited it. The companies building AI tend to read the skepticism as an onboarding problem, a trust gap to close. Show the right use cases, improve the experience, demonstrate enough reliability, and the hesitation eventually dissolves. That misreads what's happening. The hesitation isn't unfamiliarity. It doesn't dissolve because the interface gets smoother. It's recognition, formed over years on platforms that Gen Z once opened with genuine enthusiasm, that became systems extracting from them in ways they didn't consent to. Recognition doesn't disappear because the branding changes. There is another misread from the opposite direction. Some observers look at how heavily Gen Z uses AI and conclude they're too comfortable handing their thinking to a machine, too quick to let a tool do what their own minds should be doing. That also misses what's actually happening. Using something heavily doesn't mean it has been handed over uncritically. For many people in this generation, the skepticism and the use exist simultaneously in the same person, with full awareness of the tension between them. They're not confused about it. Trusting something means you accept what it gives you. Using something means you take what's useful and stay alert to the rest. Those are two completely different relationships with a tool. Gen Z may be the first generation to understand that difference at scale, not because they read about it, but because they learned it the way you only learn things that are hard to unlearn, through repeated, direct experience. There is an almost automatic checking loop built into how many of them interact with AI. The question goes in, the response comes out. They take what's useful, they verify what matters. They treat the output as a starting point, not a final answer. That is a rational response from people who spent years watching the gap between what a platform promises and what it actually does, and concluded that the gap is not a failure of execution. There is also a strange effect that emerges when something becomes genuinely useful before it fully becomes trustworthy. The mind begins running two processes at once. One part wants the convenience, the speed, the relief of having the friction taken away. The other part stays slightly outside the interaction, watching, cross-referencing, alert to the distance between what was asked and what came back. The more useful AI becomes, the more it starts participating in things people once used to define themselves. Writing, problem-solving, figuring out how to say the difficult thing, finding the language for an idea that was not quite formed yet. For many people, especially those still building confidence in what their own mind can do, that ambiguity leaves something behind. You used the tool, you benefited from it, so you use it, and you keep one eye open. Something in you learned slowly, through years of direct experience, that modern systems can feel indispensable long before they feel trustworthy. And eventually, the vigilance becomes automatic. The checking loop, the second tab, the background verification running quietly beneath every answer. That may be one of the defining psychological conditions of growing up in this era. Not rejecting technology, not trusting it. Learning to function inside systems you expect to help you and extract from you at the same time. The question is no longer whether these tools will become part of daily life. For most people, that already happened. The harder question is what permanent low-level vigilance does to a person over time. What it means to move through your education, your work, your creative life, always slightly aware that the systems helping shape your thinking may also be shaping you in return. And whether that careful, alert, never quite resting relationship with technology is a form of protection, or simply the price of living inside systems that taught you early not to fully relax. The second tab is still open.